Hello, I'm Laura Furiosi, divorced mother of 3, and I'm here with my mother, Lynette Galvin, with 35 years' experience in family law. You're listening to the Divorce Course podcast. Through our candid discussions, we hope to help you through your divorce or de facto separation. We will be answering the most commonly asked questions and covering the stages and steps that you will face on your way to freedom. Have you had a question about child support that you've been too afraid to ask? Well, one of our wonderful listeners has written in to us and sent us an email with a whole bunch of questions that we are starting to think maybe a lot of our listeners might be thinking the same thing but too afraid to ask. So today we will be talking about those questions running through your minds. Welcome, Mum.
Hello, Laura. Hello, everyone.
Now, we're doing this together today in person, not in different areas, so that's very exciting.
We had a cup of tea together and everything.
Yes. Now, one of our lovely listeners wrote in and she said, I know you've done a podcast on this, but would love for you both to go deeper based on the following questions. So today, Mum, we're going to go in deep.
A deep dive into child support in Australia.
In Australia. So number one, Mum, what is the money used for? That was her first question.
Yeah.
What can you use it for?
You can use it for anything.
Really?
You can use it for anything. Yes, there's a bit of an idea amongst some people that they've got to put it into an account for the children and just use it for their particular expenses. But you've got to remember, if you've got children, the house that you have is different. You use more electricity. You use more... I don't know.
Food,
absolutely. And all the other things. Yeah, toiletries and so forth. So the court over the years has been at pains to tell us you don't save it up, you don't give it to them when they're 18 or anything. It's for your day-to-day needs. So just treat it as an additional source of income and you don't have to make it just for the kids. And you're not answerable to anybody.
I was just about to ask that. Yeah. So if you, some of our listeners have an ex maybe who's like, well, I sent you all that money, what did you spend it on?
Yep.
Do you have to show them receipts or any information about that?
Absolutely not. Just send them a smiley face.
Okay. All right. So when it comes down to what is the money used for, it can be used for absolutely anything.
Anything. Yep.
Okay. I think that then feeds into her next question, which was if you receive it, then can your ex refuse to pay for clothing or doctor's bills while the children are in their care?
Oh, this ex sounds like a lovely person.
No.
Don't
really.
they?
No.
Okay, so... no, they can't, because if someone is spending time with the child, that's been taken into account when the child support has been calculated, and it's called their child support percentage. So if you've got a child, say, going 50% one house, 50% in another house, then the court's going to allocate funding between those two houses, but depending on what each person's earning, okay? Which is interesting because it means that if you've got a 50-50 split, a lot of people over the years, they assume that they're not entitled to child support or they don't have to pay child support. But if the other person is earning more, yes, they will have to pay you some child support.
So that's a good note. A side note from this question, if you I have heard a lot of our listeners and our members in our Q&As go, I don't get child support because we have the children 50-50. And that's a big error because, you want the children to be provided for evenly and hopefully not live in some big mansion in one house and then in a caravan at the other time.
That's exactly right. Exactly right. The court wants the children to have the lifestyle to which they are really entitled and it should be even across both households.
Okay, so that takes back to that question again.
Yep.
So say one of our listeners, or one of them has actually had the situation where their ex has the other co-parent has the child with them, they've taken them to the doctor or they need to buy them clothes. And they're insisting that the other parent pay because they pay child support, so they shouldn't have to pay anything, and that's a no.
That's an absolute no. I mean, I really feel for the kids and for this person.
That's terrible for the kids.
It's terrible for the kids, and I know that you will end up doing whatever it takes to keep the kids clothed and fed and doing their sports. But it's very poor form on the other person's part. And if the agency was asked about it, the child support agency was asked about it, they'd say absolutely not. Each of you pays for the child while they're in your care, and any money that's paid one to the other by way of child support as through the parents is a way of just sort of trying to equalise the lifestyle the kids have. Okay. It doesn't mean that's their entire obligations finished.
Yeah.
When they send you this money every month, that just doesn't mean that at all.
So the child support technically should cover sport, medical.
No. So I need to go back to basics, I think, a little bit. Okay. So the child support's calculated on a formula, and I touched on that, depending on what percentage of care each person's got. Then they look at the costs for the children depending on their ages. And so they used to call it a basket of goods approach, but what they've done is calculated roughly how much it costs looking across the whole of Australia, how much a child 0 to 5 might cost, how much a 5 to 11-year-old, 11 to 13, and all of that. So that's all taken into account on the pieces, on what has to be paid to each person. So sports and music and all of those things should be paid equally between you both. If you are someone where the other person's enrolled them in a stack of stuff and you can't afford it, you'd be within your rights to say, I can't afford it. Okay. So those decisions should be made together and paid equally by you.
So you're meant to negotiate and say, hey,
stuff.
I've just, such and such is doing this extra thing. Can you pay half?
Yeah, when it's extra, it's probably not just like, are they going to footy or are they doing violin? It's really extra. Unusual stuff like they've been accepted to go on some pre-Olympic event or whatever.
Or go and speak for the United Nations in America.
Right. Those are things you really do need to talk about. But generally what happens in your care is your cost responsibility.
Right. Okay. All right. I hope that cleared that question up. Now this one I find really an in-depthy question, Mum. And you've mentioned this before, and we have done 2 other child support episodes, so I'll put them in the show notes for everybody to listen to, because they really talk about the mechanics of how it works and what to do, etc. But this is more about questions about child support. So the question from the listener in her letter was, my ex is trying to get more parenting time to avoid paying child support. How can you manage this tricky situation when he is not considering the children's best interests? It's a financial motivation instead. So, Mum, you've said stuff about this before, so what do you say to the listener about that?
Okay. I assume that our listener knows for a fact that it's just for the child support, because sometimes people are wanting more time because they love the children. But I do think anecdotally I've seen an increase in the parents wanting extra time, and sometimes you have to think it's motivated by child support. It could be motivated by getting a bigger percentage of the property pool. So yes, they'd need to persuade a court that it was in the child's best interest to have more time if you were going to take it to the court. If you've got a parenting plan, stick with your parenting plan. Don't change it. I think in this particular case, it had been one parenting split, so to speak, for a year and a half or more, and then suddenly wanting to change. You'd have to be, if the other person decides to take you to court over that, they'd have to convince the court it was worth the court's while to increase the time. And the High Court said that there's no difference between, 3 days and 4 days, or 8 days and 7 days, whatever it is.
Okay.
So as far as the kids are concerned. So, yeah, I do see it, and I do think that it's played into a lot. Hopefully the kids benefit, though, because they've got greater involvement.
Well, that's true.
From the other parent
I guess
in
one way, if it's a financial motivation for the other parent to be more involved in the child's life, I guess in a way that's a good thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what the motivation is, but the kid gets to see the other parent.
That's right.
I guess. So that, as long as everything's happy and nice safe, then I don't, unfortunately, everyone has different motivations, but sometimes that can play into it.
And we don't always know the other person's motivation.
Yeah. The next question, she said, is we have the same parenting arrangements for 16 months. Okay, this is what you just said.
Yes.
But when I applied for child support, he now wants to change the arrangement. So, so
that might look like it's a reason.
Yes.
So anyone who's wondering what child support might look like if they haven't already applied, or if they're wondering what difference a day here or there might make, could go on to the child support website in Australia, and they have the formula set out there. So if a little bit maths orientated, you can work it out yourself.
Or you can use the calculator.
Yep, and there's a calculator to put it in as well.
You just type it in, yeah.
Yeah, and that'll help you. I do the long way sometimes just to double check their process so I understand their process. And it's like doing a puzzle. I'm very excited when I get the same answer as the calculator.
Okay, so definitely check that out if you're interested in seeing what the difference is. But even just maybe one day probably wouldn't make that much of a difference.
It might make a little bit of a difference.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
It might make a little bit because they do it in percentages. So it might be 23% care, 16% care, whatever.
Okay. Her next question is, while you're waiting for child support to collect the money, do you continue to pay for everything in the hope you do get back payment of outstanding child support?
You wouldn't want to be desperately counting on it. Just in case something happens, the other person might put in an appeal or not be earning as much as you thought or have higher needs. But I guess the key here is thinking of the children. I guess if you keep paying stuff for the children so that they don't miss out, well, that's, you're a wonderful parent if you can afford it. But if not, I wouldn't put yourself into debt just hoping for child support to be paid. So maybe trim your expenses a little bit until you're sure. I don't know our listeners' financial circumstances.
Yes, and this is general information, so we're just gauging from one letter what.
Yeah.
Okay, so Mum, my question to you is, because that was the last of her questions.
That was very helpful, wasn't it, to ask those things?
But I think a lot of people see child support sometimes as a, I'm not going to do that because we can sort it out ourselves, or I'm not going to do that because we've got the children 50-50. And there's a lot on TikTok of these people that are shaming people who get child support. Shame on you. Even there was, in the news just recently, there's a famous actor it's just revealed he spends $3 million a year in child support. This is in America.
Yeah.
But he does have 11 children, so, you know. And everyone's saying how disgusting that is.
Oh, rubbish.
So what do you say to those people who are listening today who maybe haven't listened to our other ones yet, who are feeling like they probably should apply for child support, but they're a little bit ashamed, or they don't want to upset their co-parent, or they feel like they just want to do it themselves? Oh,
and that's a big problem with Australian people. They just want to do it themselves. They don't like maintenance for themselves from the other person, and the child support is another area where they feel that. But what I'd be saying to our listeners is it's not for you, it's for the kids. As we were talking about before, it's so that the children can have the life to the standard that they could expect to have had, as much as we can, post-separation as pre-separation. So that actor whose kids are getting that much in child support, 11 of them, well, if they were in an intact relationship, no doubt they would be having a very luxurious life. So I don't think there's anything really noble about not asking for the children's support. You're asking on behalf of the kids, and the other person should be happy to pay because it's for the child's benefit. I just think you might be managing okay now, but as time goes by, you might find yourself saying no to the kids for things when you really didn't want to say no to them.
My next question to you is, and I know a lot of people ask this question, is how does child support play into the family court system? Is it because we know that the child support is run by a different organisation, it's not in the courts don't deal with child support, but does the court look at child support?
Yeah. So just to clarify, the Child Support Agency is a Commonwealth body, and so is the Family Court, so is the Tax Office. So they all kind of work together in some respects, but you're not allowed to apply to the court usually for child support. You deal with the agency. It's cheaper and basically free, really. You get a review. If you don't agree, you can appeal, then you can go to the Administrative Appeals. And then last resort, you can go to the Family Court to get a change to your order if you want to. But very few matters go that way now.
Okay.
That's one point. But as for how does it play into family court proceedings, It's one of the factors under Section 60cc of the Family Law Act where the court looks at the best interests of the children and how they decide who the children should live with and what time they spend with people. And one of the factors is the extent to which the other person has contributed to the costs of the child. So a person who doesn't pay child support, if they bring an application to the court about the children and it turns out they're not supporting the children, the court will frown on that and be less inclined to grant an order that they might seek.
Okay, can I just clarify? You do sometimes say in a lot of our episodes the court will frown on that.
Yeah.
And I always have this vision of this big, that baby from, I don't know what that show is, where the big sun with the baby face and it's just looking sad.
Teletubbies.
But I don't understand when you say the court frowns on that. So what? Like if the court frowns at you, it's like whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, you can frown. What do you mean by frown?
I'm using, I think, 17th century language.
Okay.
Sorry,
Okay.
but it's a habit. Okay, so whenever a matter goes to court, particularly in family law, the court applies the legislation and it applies old cases and precedents, but there is always an element where the judge can use their own discretion and the judge can has a fair bit of movement in the way that they might apply the law or those old cases.
Right.
Now, if a judge forms an unfavourable view of you, that's what I call frowning on it,
Okay.
then the judge will, when he's faced with a discretionary decision, he'll move away from what you want towards what the other person wants because they've formed that view of you. There's always a range.
Okay.
There's a range in like time a child spends with the person from one night a fortnight to 7 nights or more a fortnight. And that is all within the judge's discretion. There's no calculator for that.
So when you're saying then if they're not paying child support and the family court looks at that and the judge frowns upon the fact they're not paying child support, then it could affect the time...
Their outcome. Absolutely.
Of time with the child.
Yep. All right.
Or
absolutely.
property settlement?
Yes, on property settlement, if you're not paying child support, when the court comes to assess the future needs of a person, remember we talk about looking at contributions and then future needs, they're going to say, well, this person has the children and half the time and there's no child support, or they've got the child most of the time and there's been no child support, so they can expect past behaviour being a good indicator of what's going on in the future to not receive child support in the future. Okay. And therefore the court will give them extra property to compensate them for that.
Okay. All right. So that's something to consider if, I guess, as a consolation, if your co-parent isn't paying child support, then you can be, well, at least if we go to court, then you will be frowned upon by a giant Teletubby son.
Yes. And the judge.
And the judge.
And he or she will get the pips with you probably.
The pips.
Yeah.
That's also a very old saying.
Well, I can't say what I'm thinking.
Oh, okay.
But yeah.
Rhymes with pips. Okay.
Yes, so that you will eventually there'll be consequences.
Okay. All right. My next question to you is, what if you have been separated for a while?
Yes. You're making these up as you go along now.
We have these people ask these questions. So what if someone says to you, oh, I've never gone for child support. I've never asked for it, but I'm angry at you. I'm going to go for child support now, and I'm going to get all the child support that you should have paid me since little Johnny was 3. Is that a thing? You've made it this far. You've separated or made the decision, and that's a big deal, and that takes courage, and we totally respect that. The problem now is you don't know what the next step is to do. You might have some idea, but you're worried it might be costly or you might make a mistake. We don't all have a lawyer on speed dial to ask those little questions swirling through our minds or to fully explain the process in plain speak. If this is you, you've come to the right place. This course was created because I wish I'd known what I do now. Lynn knows the law, and we both know what it is like getting divorced. It was during my divorce that she realised how much more support and information is needed for people going through this process. Knowledge is power. We're all capable of learning and doing things to help us to get to a better life. Mum and I want to give this knowledge and know-how to you and save you money while we're at it. Empower, educate and equip yourself with the legal know-how and the tools you need to get your divorce, property settlement and children's matters finally settled. Work through the course at your own pace without feeling confused, lost, scared or overwhelmed with family law legal jargon and processes. If you're ready, join us at www.thedivorcecourse.com.au and click on Find Out More about the DIY Divorce Blueprint. I'm going to go for child support now and I'm going to get all the child support that you should have paid me since little Johnny was 3. Is that a thing?
No, it's not a thing.
Okay.
They'll backdate it a little bit, but not very far.
Okay, so there's no such thing as backdating.
If you've
decades
never
or
applied,
years.
that's right. If you've never applied to child support, then you aren't going to get that back pay. It might be at the most a couple of months usually, and that's probably more the time lag between you lodging your application, which you can do online, and when they make the assessment. So I think they go now from the date that you lodge the thing.
Right.
So and the rationale for that is before child support, you used to, when the maintenance for children was heard in the family courts, you were never allowed to get more than 12 months in arrears. You'd ask the court, look, he hasn't paid for this many years, therefore he owes me like $7,000 a year for 3 years. I want $21,000. The judge would go, no. I might take it back 1 year. And the rationale for that is that child support is not meant to build up a nest egg for you or for the child. It's meant to pay for the day-to-day expenses. So in those days, the court would have to be satisfied you actually had credit card debt or something that had accumulated as a result. And then even then, we used to call it the 12-month rule. It wasn't really a rule, but yes. So that the rationale, if you understand the rationale behind child maintenance, and that is it's to be used for their expenses.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you get child support and alimony, spousal maintenance?
Yep, you can.
Okay.
So what the kids need is one thing. If you're not able to support yourself and the other parent has capacity to help pay for you, you could apply for spousal maintenance. That has to be done in a court. The Child Support Agency doesn't calculate that. But if you manage to get a court order that says that the other person's got to pay you some money, whether it's so much a week or so much a month, and it might be like just until property settlement, or it might be forever or until you get a job, whatever, you can put that order into the Child Support Agency and they will collect that at the same time as collecting the child support.
Oh, okay.
That's a little known fact.
There you go.
But it does make it easier. I mean, I think the Child Support Agency has been brilliant because when the parties are fighting, perhaps about time with kids and property and everything's very fraught, the Child Support Agency really takes a lot of the heat out of it because you can say to your ex-partner, it's not me, it's the Child Support Agency.
Yeah.
Tell it to the Child Support Agency. And the Child Support Agency is able to deal with both of you and develop usually some sort of relationship that doesn't mean you've got to keep asking for money and asking for it on time.
Now, if you're in a domestic violence relationship and there's child support issues, there is another avenue, isn't there, that you can go down. So you, if you fear that there's going to be some issues with asking for child support from your ex, there's another avenue for support for your child that's not going to be going through to your children.
Is that when you're getting Centrelink payments?
Yeah, some sort of additional payments.
So
yes.
So if you're on the single parents pension, I guess I don't know what they call it these days, the Centrelink will often require you to apply for child support because the Centrelink, being a Commonwealth body, is administering money from another old expression. You're going to roll your eyes. The public purse.
Ooh, the
public purse.
Yes.
I just always imagine them with one of those big old-fashioned click purses that your grandma had.
Yeah.
So the Commonwealth Government says, why should we pay everything for your children when you're there earning money? You can pay, and that's why they set up the Child Support Agency. And they insist usually, if you're getting Centrelink payments, that you also apply for child support. If you say to the Centrelink, look, there's domestic violence and I am worried about the consequences if I apply for child support, I don't know how safe I'll be. Sometimes they will say, okay, all right, we understand that. Instead, we will give you XYZ, to support the child.
Well, that's good to know as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so when it comes to child support, you know, there's a lot of myths out there, and we have done 2 episodes covering really in the nitty-gritty of that. I guess just recently we were on a podcast, Mum, Triple J Hack, if that's going to be coming up.
So exciting.
And in that we're discussing, you know, what you can disclose on social media.
Yes.
And when I was doing some research for that, I did see there's a huge story going around Australia at the moment about this one particular lady who has done a TikTok story vlog on how she feeds her children on the amount of child support she gets a day, and I think it was something silly like $5 or $10
and that's
a day.
Ridiculous.
So it's a video of the child eating one piece of bacon, and then the video of child eating one blueberry, and like it's wearing one shoe.
Oh my goodness!
Going to Woolworths and getting the free fruit. So like, which is a great idea to get free fruit. Don't get me wrong, for your kids, but that has been going on.
That's terrible.
TikTok, and it's caused a big blow up. What are the rules in regards to disclosing what your co-parent pays you for child support?
You can't.
Oh, you can't?
You shouldn't. You shouldn't be discussing anything on air that might identify a person. Section 121 of the Family Law Act, I mentioned that on the hack, means technically you could go to jail for it. But this is really, I'm sorry, but that's child abuse. And a complete misunderstanding of what the child support is meant to do. The child support that the other person pays is to be added to your income to kind of equalise the child's experience in your care. So you don't, it's not like you've completely absolved yourself of any responsibility for the child. That, I think that's terrible. Lucky I didn't see it. I might have said something awful.
Oh, well, it's a huge storm at the moment.
Poor little kid.
So I guess...
And you know, what's that child going to think?
I know.
I'm
when they're older, they're going to be mortified.
And I can tell you that would be enough, I would have thought, for a court to consider removing the child from that person's care and giving it to the other parent. So
that's something to don't be joining that trend of showing how much money you get for child support and how you feed your children.
You need to be gracious and you need to be discreet about stuff. You know, the proper channel, if you don't think it's enough, and you're struggling, is to ask for the child support agency to review the amount that they paid. So sometimes, like the other person might have a business, and their their taxable income and child support's based on taxable income might not properly reflect what they've actually got and what benefits they're getting. So they might like have a free car, phone, groceries, electricity, whatever. And they run it all through the business, and that lowers their taxable income. So you can get onto child support and they will give you the form to fill in. And it's one of the grounds for changing it. And you can say, hey, I know that his taxable income or her taxable income doesn't really reflect what she's getting in terms of benefits, and they will have another look at it.
And I think there's something important to remember if you're listening today. Centrelink and child support isn't, even though it does sound like a big, faceless, scary body, if you do actually ring them, they seem like, from what I've heard, to be nice, normal people. They are just other people like us, and they have to deal with these stories every day. But they're going to give you the information. If you can't figure it out on looking on the website, if you can't figure out the form, if you are looking for a form that doesn't exist, or you'd like to know, hey, this is just the question. Well, for example, we had another listener write in and say, we're living under the one roof.
Oh, yes.
And my ex has just applied for child support. Is that a thing? And it turns out apparently it is. So
if she's earning more, the listener's earning more than the other person, then it is a thing.
Yes.
I think there was a default back to 50-50.
Yeah, it
if you're living under
50-50,
one roof.
50, yes.
But just because you're 50-50 doesn't mean that child support's not payable one to the other. It all depends on your taxable income, or if you apply for a review, then it's your income, you know, that should be your taxable income.
But that listener wrote in and asked that question. You were busy. I can't answer it because I'm not a lawyer. And I just suggested, why don't you just give child support a call? And they had the answer within 15 minutes.
We can put the number for child support
Yes,
down below.
we'll put the number for
Yeah.
child support. We might even read it out. But yeah, you could ring them and find out within 15 minutes. They emailed me back and told me the answer.
Oh, brilliant.
So you don't feel powerless if
Yes.
you've got a question. So the lovely listener that wrote in those questions today,
Yes.
there's no reason why you can't ring up and ask those questions.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's
you
true.
might have to be put on hold for a bit, but this person the other day didn't get put on hold at all.
Yeah.
And, you'd better ask than miss out.
And they're very good. The people who do that job, I really take my hat off to them, because it's all very well as a lawyer. I look after my clients, and, the other side is none of my problem, really. But the poor people at child support talk to you, and then they'll talk to your ex, and they're probably getting it in both ears.
Yes. Yes.
But they're very experienced and
should
very skilled.
Have a National Child Support Appreciation Day.
We should.
Yes.
Honestly, we should.
We really should.
Because I don't think they last in that job very long.
No.
Sometimes the stress gets to them.
All right, so if you're listening today and you have any more questions about child support, give them a call. We're going to give you the number right now, 131-272, and this is valid as of November 2022. Or you can call 1-800-241-272. They're both child support numbers, and they can point you in the right direction, but you might as well just give them a call and find out. And to those who have been told by their ex or their co-parent, including the listener that wrote in the letter, if they're telling you what you can and can't spend the money on, this is your license.
This is your
to
permission.
Say, no,
Just smiley face and do what you need.
Yes.
Okay, because that's the law. That's what that basket of goods approach was roughly how much electricity they use, what it generally costs to feed them, and run them around in the car.
Yeah. And don't be afraid to ask them to help out pay a little bit extra if it's out
an
of the
unusual
pocket,
thing.
out of the box unusual thing.
Yes.
And also, don't be tempted to air any information about how much child support you get, particularly on social media.
Well, good luck trying to negotiate with someone if you've really rubbished them on social media. I don't think there's going to be a voluntary increase in payment anytime soon for that lady who's really being abusive to
Well, it's
her
not really
child.
solving the problem, is it?
No, it's just
adding more fuel to the fire.
bad manners and
Yes.
bad grace.
Yes, I don't think Mum's that fan of TikTok at the moment. She's seen quite a few things she's not happy with.
Oh,
But anyway.
well, it has its role.
Yes,
But
it does. All right, thank you so much, Mum, for your time, and thank you so much to the listener who wrote in with those questions. And if you have some questions, you can write to us at thedivorcecourspodcast@gmail.com. You can also check out our website at www.thedivorcecourse.com.au, where you can download a free mediation checklist readiness worksheet, or you can also download our What to Take Before You Go checklist.
And we're also on TikTok.
Yes, Instagram, Facebook,
everywhere.
Everywhere.
As long as
and
you put,
YouTube.
And YouTube. Put The Divorce Course Podcast.
That's right. All
and
right.
you'll find us.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Let's
you have a
cup
wonderful
of tea.
day.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. If you found this podcast helpful, we'd love it if you could rate, review, and subscribe. By doing so, you are spreading the word to help someone else just like you. Lynn would like to remind you that this podcast is general advice only, and you should always get legal advice in relation to your particular situation. And remember that the Australian laws may have changed since recording.